countries, it's a lot more prevalent than it is here. All right. In other countries, it's almost glorified. In other countries, the Coca-Cola Classic is something that is something that's revered by young people for many, many reasons. One of the reasons that my cousins and I, probably to this day, still drink it, is because we saw the older men sitting on the stoop drinking beer, and it was in a nice bottle. And Coca-Cola was one of the closest things that it looked like. We wanted to be like that.
So, as you all can see, we're having about the intersection and the weaving of food, art, and technology. With that, I mean, sometimes it's not a conversation that we see is obvious, even though it is something that happens several times a day in our lifetime. We don't really think about that this conversation is happening all the time, and we want to continue to illuminate the beauty and really the creative genius that comes from different folks, different aspects, different identities in our community. So with that, I want to introduce my sister, Amara Tabor Smith, who's a choreographer, professor at University of California, Berkeley. So many things, but she is my sister who also nourishes us by feeding us, by performing in community with us, and by inspiring us to do our best. And I love her deeply. So I know you do. I know you do. And she's actually someone who I met a couple of years before I moved here at a performance at La Pina, where she and Chef Brian Terry, who is also in the room, were having, you were doing something, you were DJing, Brian was DJing.
Freestyle.
Doing your thing, freestyling, and you were walking through the audience feeding us something chocolate. That's what I remember. And I fell in love with it. So just really happy and excited to have you here as a member and as a member of our community. Thank you.
How y'all doing? Okay, so before I launch into talking a little bit about what I do, I want to have you have that experience. So I want you to turn to somebody nearby, and this is what you're going to do in a very short amount of time, a minute or less. You're going to introduce yourself and share with this person one food or meal that reminds you of home. And begin. And would anybody like to quickly share something they learned? Yes.
That Darnell, his mother always made peach cobbler and lasagna, and that's what he remembers.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Anybody else? Two more maybe. Yeah? Everybody? Okay, great. Michelle.
I just met Ronnie, and it was hard for her to pick because she had so many different things that her family would make. So being multicultural, she had a mix of different foods. So it was curry, noodles, and maybe gumbo, and different things. So she had a lot of stuff.
Beautiful. Maybe one more? Yes.
Hi, I'm Najari, and Katrina, can I share a piece of your story? I'm gonna throw a little bit of mine in there too. So I mentioned spaghetti, you know, because that's something that my mom and my little brother, we'd all get together and make, and it was a particular way that we made it. And Katrina told me that she had just had that the other night. Last night. So there was like a bit of a connection right there. And she also told me about collard greens. And I think we could both tell a big old pot of collard greens between the two of us with room for more. Thank you.
Yes. So, thank you. Thank you for participating in that and also sharing your stories with each other and sharing back. That is the heart of what my work has been about, and specifically a project that started for me in 2008, I think was the beginning. I'm a choreographer. I have a company called Deep Waters Dance Theater. The work that I do is primarily around engaging people with each other, and that is what the seed becomes the seed for the performance. So this piece that I created called Our Daily Bread was inspired by my mother's gumbo. I don't eat gumbo anymore. My mother makes seafood gumbo, and I don't eat gumbo anymore because I don't eat seafood because of the way it's farmed and the way we get our seafood. But I couldn't quite, though I don't eat seafood anymore, I couldn't come to terms with the notion that I would never eat my mother's gumbo. And for years, I would only eat seafood on my birthday when my mother would make me gumbo. But basically, in a nutshell, my mother and I got in a conversation about what does it mean to have a food tradition that you no longer partake in? Why is this food so important? And one is that it really, what I realized is that food connects you to who you are. When I understood how important gumbo was in my life, I realized that it was because gumbo connected me to my Louisiana roots. I'm born and raised in San Francisco. My mother was actually born in LA, but her family was from Louisiana. And my connection to Louisiana is through my mother's gumbo. So that began my journey into making a piece about food and how food shapes our cultural identity. So I wanted to bring people together to talk about food. And I also discovered, as probably you discovered in this process, that you learn a lot about people just by talking about your food in ways that you might not learn otherwise without a certain amount of grilling about, well, where did you come from? Well, but when you learn about somebody's food, you learn a lot about where they're from. So it really reinforced for me the power, not only the importance of food, which is obvious that it's essential to us, but that it represents home, that it's about nurturing, that it's about where we come from. So I began to make this dance theater work by bringing people together to talk about food and have what I call food parties. And the food parties would be, we would have different themes. Sometimes it would be about, we're gonna come together, and they were always potluck. It was like, bring a dish and share a story about food. No one turned away for lack of food. You know, just come and share stories and partake. And out of that experience, and these food parties happened everywhere. They happened in dance clubs at 2 in the morning. They happened in, you know, cultural centers, in people's homes, at La Peña. And it was through this experience that I got to meet Mr. Brian Terry, who became a very important part of that process of creating the piece. And so they happened in multiple spaces. And out of that, the stories came into the piece. So a lot of people's stories actually were a part of the performance. The performance was also a community engaged event. I'm going to show a clip, and what you'll notice is this in the theater that produced the piece, which is Counterpulse. They really supported the inception of the work. This actually was their kitchen, which is right off of the stage, and I was like, well, we're about to use that, that's obvious. And so we cooked during the show, and we fed people throughout the show. And all the food was vegan, it was organic, it was cooked by me and some of the performers. We got together and we cooked food every day for the show that night. And that was really important to me, that we cook the food ourselves, because of what in all the research I was doing, it was becoming more and more evident to me how We don't recognize the hands that cook our food, especially when we're eating out. We don't know what's going on and what the experiences are. And it was important to me that, you know, the food that the audience ate was an extension of what we were giving them. So it couldn't be bought, it had to be prepared by our hands. One second. So this section, the piece is stories, and some of them are metaphors for food, and some of them are, some of the sections of the work were literal, they were experiences that I was trying to convey about where our food comes from. So we used gumbo as the metaphor for Katrina. So the piece is also really celebratory, although I'm showing you all sections that are pretty serious, but the whole idea of the piece was to feed people the bitter and the sweet. One of the things that kept coming up in the process was how, you know, in this culture we don't recognize, we recognize two flavors, salty and sweet, but there's bitter. There's the bitter that is actually aids the digestion, and we were thinking about how the way that we avoid that flavor is the way that we avoid the truth, and the painful experiences, which are really important for us to recognize if we're going to make change, you know. So in the process of making this work, in the process of the piece, we would feed people, but we wanted to make sure that they understood that, you know, how disconnected we are from our food sources. The story, the news story, actually happened during the making of the piece, and when I saw it on the news, the first thing I thought is, oh my God, what if not only is that horrible, but who ate the last piece of fruit or vegetables that this woman picked? And that was, that haunted me. And so that was the quote-unquote inspiration. The other thing I want to say is that the presence, the other women in red and black really symbolized the mother and Mother Earth, because the war on food and the control of the food systems is a war on women, and it's a war on the mother. And pretty much, if not virtually all cultures speak of Earth as Mother Earth, and that is often left out of the conversation, is that how, you know, our issues with food is really the war on women as well. But I'll leave it there, so thank you.
Thank you, Amara. And thank you all for your attention and for your patience with us this morning. We're gonna have to wrap up the conversation, because what happens here at 9 o'clock is that people show up to work. This is their office, and this is our co-working space. But I really just want to thank and honor and celebrate again all of your work and the intersections of our lives, and how that continues to be an ongoing conversation here in this space, in this container, as we honor the container being the mother in the womb, as we wrap up International Women's History Month, and as we are in this place of wrapping up this conversation this morning, that the work will continue to unfold here. And I guess I want to just offer a very short minute or so for each of you to wrap this together for us as we move into our day, and hopefully in a mindful way around the celebration of what is next, and the regeneration of our communities through conversations like this. Kurt?
I guess the last thing I would say is that while while as a program, the Hidden Genius Project may focus on young black men, this is not a problem that is, this is not a problem that's only ours. It's a problem that, to me, if we are going to move forward, which we are, if we are going to move forward, we have to start working together on all the issues, not just technology related, but on all the issues that really do affect us. Like you said just a second ago, like you ended with, there's a war on women that's involved in a lot of the messaging that's out there, regardless of if that's about food or politics or wherever else you can think of it. But to me, I guess the message I'd like to leave everybody with is that the world needs to get to a place, in my opinion, where we stop leaving people out. Because when we leave people out, we lose opportunities. We lose the opportunity for that individual to share their experiences. We lose the opportunity for that individual to contribute. And we lose the opportunity to contribute to their lives as well. And so that's last thing.
Yeah, I'll just say that we need to reconnect. We need to keep connecting, eating, breaking bread together, being mindful about our food and where our food comes from is also the way that we need to be mindful of each other and care for each other. And that food and art, I see food as nutrition, you know, or nourishment for the body, and art as nourishment for the soul. And so really nourishing ourselves in all ways and connecting through these experiences is a way to heal.
And I think the message I love for people to consider from the work of Urban Health is our own personal health is a reflection of the health of the environment that we're in, the environment that we're a part of. We are utterly connected. And I encourage people to be vulnerable to place. And that means also being vulnerable to the people in that place. And to be interdependent in a very intimate way. And the really simple place to start is with your food.
So thank you all for joining us, and thank you all for your statements in terms of just being in embodied work. You know, that this breaking bread together, these grits and these greens. I want to thank Grace Harth again for preparing a beautiful community meal for us this morning, and for Red Bay Coffee for supporting our need to be buzzed up. But again, it speaks to who picks the coffee, who picks that, who harvests that. You know, black hands, brown hands harvest that, and it's a commodity traded all over the planet. And it is not an equitable distribution of food or resources or money. And so we are going to continue to have those kinds of conversations around food, art, and technology, because they actually are all the same thing. Our way of growing, planting, and harvesting food is actually technology, you know? And that art, the art making of creating opportunities for us to eat with each other and how we do that, all of that it's all connected. So I want to thank you and invite you all to join us for yet another conversation. Chef Bryant Terry is launching his latest cookbook, Afro Vegan. He's having his book release party here on the 9th of April. It's up on his website, bryant-terry.com. It's also up on Facebook. It will be up on our webpage today. And so if you want to pick up, there's some Ambrosia Ice Pops. There's some recipe cards on the desk over there if you'd like to get a taste of it. There's actually a shout out to Grits and Greens in this cookbook, because Bryant was actually our first guest at our first Grits and Greens a year and a half ago with Edward West and Majora Carter, who was just here with us again last week. So we're coming full circle with our family on a national level, and Oakland representing on a national and international tip. So thank you for joining us this morning, and please do pick up a card around membership here at Impact Hub Oakland. And I hear that there's food left. Please do get some seconds or thirds in any case, and we'll invite folks to come up. And thank you for joining us. Peace.